Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have a book review of the book Live Free or Die by John Ringo. This is the first book in the Troy Rising series, and it was published by Baen Books Publishing in their science fiction division. As I mentioned, this is the first in a trilogy, and I have the whole trilogy because I bought them all because I'm excited about them. The second book is called Citadel, and the third book is called The Hot Gate. And I picked up the first book for a myriad of reasons. One, I was looking for new sci-fi books and authors. Two, I was looking for something that might be a little different. Three, I was looking for more Baen books because I like Baen as a publisher and I want to support Baen because I think they're great people. I, in fact, have had some conversations with people at Baen recently, some contact, because Baen reached out to me and I helped them with releasing news about the new Timothy Zahn novels, which I put in a video. That was a lot of fun to do. And so between all those things, was looking for new authors, new books, new sci-fi, something different, and I came across a good cover for Live Free or Die. Because of how dark it is, I'm not sure how well it'll show up on here, so I'll try to describe it a little bit. You have this big, huge battleship, maybe this space station almost, that has kind of like a Trojan look to it, and then you have some little itty-bitty little ships attacking it. And as I mentioned, the name of this series is Troy Rising, so that's why you say Trojan. And this is a science fiction series about kind of a first contact concept, where the aliens come down to meet us, and there are good aliens and there are bad aliens that we meet. And the good aliens want to trade with us, but the bad aliens don't. Or rather, the bad aliens don't want us to trade with anyone else but them. So the bad aliens basically put an embargo on Earth, and the nations of Earth, which are still acting separately, are only allowed to trade with the bad aliens. We have contact with the good aliens, but not a lot of contact. And we also have this average Joe, Tyler Vernon. He's a kind of shorter guy, but he's a hard worker, and he's trying to make ends meet. And he also, at one point, was an author. He wrote like some web comics. And he actually meets some good aliens, and he's has an entrepreneurial spirit, and he's trying to come up with what is going to be the thing that these aliens will trade with us. And what does he come up with? Well, it's in the title of part 1 of the book, so this is not a spoiler, and that is maple syrup. I decided to pull a little prop I thought would be funny to have, maple syrup. And he decides to sell them maple syrup because that is something that actually works with them. You know, a lot of our minerals and a lot of our foods and stuff don't work with the aliens. They have no use for it. But maple syrup makes the good aliens drunk. And it makes them, like, really, really drunk. And they love it, and they can't get enough of it. So he has an entrepreneurial spirit. He decides he's going to use the money from his little bit of selling of this syrup and buys up a lot of land and sells even more and buys more land, and he becomes a really wealthy man. But then he doesn't just use his wealth for himself. No. He actually decides to start investing in our spaceships and in our future technology for going beyond Earth. Does that sound like another billionaire business person that we know? And he's all about expanding into the universe and also protecting specifically America, but also the world. And so he invests his resources into building a giant space station which will basically protect Earth from the bad aliens. And it is just a really fun ride throughout, particularly part 1. Is 3 parts. Part 1 is the most entertaining part. But parts 2 and 3 are also very, very good. I just think that part 1 was just perfectly paced, and that's why it works so well. Also, parts 2 and 3 in the book are very entertaining, but the problem with parts 2 and 3 is that he delves into the technical aspects of shipbuilding and of mining. And there's a reason that it's needed. And it's actually, like, the overall plot of the book is always fun and always interesting. But the problem comes that occasionally he he states that he wants it to be as scientifically close to possible. Obviously, aliens aren't real, but he wants to be as scientifically close to realistic as possible. And as a result, he really wants to make the technology real, and he wants to make everything match up. And for some authors, this works really well. And I would say that some of the stuff in The Martian worked really well when it was realistic, and then some of the stuff by the same author, in Artemis, the descriptions didn't always work as well. So there's kind of a give and take of how well you have to handle it. And just there were a few chapters, he just got way too bogged down that I just didn't care about the ins and outs of building the starships. But when he was using the starships, or when he was trading with the aliens, or working with the US government, or working with other business people, or working with his children, all that stuff, fascinating. Endlessly fascinating. And so I really did have a good time with this book. Part of what makes this book interesting is the worldviews espoused. And this is where we get tricky in the booktube community. Anytime you talk about worldviews of authors, you're bound to get some criticism. So I wanted to say this part very carefully. Authors tend, especially in the science fiction and fantasy community, tend to be more liberal-leaning and have liberal worldviews, and that is totally good. That's totally fine. It's expected even. And it has been that way, at least during my lifetime, that from when I've been reading. And of course, there are exceptions to the rule. There are some authors who are incredibly conservative in the science fiction and fantasy community. But generally, when you stack them up, they're almost all of a liberal worldview, which is fine because liberal worldview tends to work really well in the literary genres. But it is fun to have diversity. And people with multiple, in the booktube community, tend to support the idea of having diversity in the publishing space. Well, if we're going to have diversity of thought, diversity of opportunity, diversity of styles and whatnot, well, maybe we should have diversity of worldviews. And so it was different having a very overtly, it's not just an author who happens to be conservative who's published by a publisher. This is an author who is overtly politically conservative and libertarian. I don't know whether John Ringo would say he's more libertarian than conservative or more conservative than libertarian. I don't know the ins and outs of his specific details, but he is for certainly on the right side of the political spectrum as opposed to being on the left, like so many of his co-workers and fellow authors at Bain and at other publishers. And I think that it's interesting to have such a different political viewpoint, and it was just fascinating seeing his worldview seep into his character of Tyler Vernon, but also seep into how the world operates. You know, the whole premise of the book is the U.S. government and other world governments are not doing their jobs and are not able to effectively do anything against the aliens. So an individual man is able to pull himself up by his bootstraps and is able to essentially save the universe. And he uses business and entrepreneurial spirit to do so. That is a much more conservative style story than it is a liberal one. And it's just interesting to have that because it was different. It really felt like the tone, even though he has the same world building problems of getting too in the weeds that other science fiction authors have, it still is interesting to have a new, different type of story. So it was a little bit, I would use the word refreshing, to have a different type of worldview espoused. And then also, it was interesting how he interwove it throughout, where there are times when he's talking with politicians and he says something like, "I don't agree with you, Mr. President, and I don't think I would never vote for you, but you are my president, so I will respect your wishes and I will work with you if I need to." And I was like, that's a very interesting perspective, and that's a very interesting way to write your characters. And so that if you're someone that reading a book that happens to be by a conservative author where his conservative worldview comes in is gonna bother you, maybe don't read this series, but I think it's worth it for no matter where you are on the political spectrum, because I think that it's good to read different worldviews. Same reason why I think it's good to read people like R.F. Kuang, who wrote the Poppy War series, who has a very liberal worldview, but is very much able to present good arguments and good ideas from that liberal worldview. So I think that that aspect of the book is really interesting. Also, with this book, it sets up a future really well. It sets up more books. It is its own book, but each part of the book felt like it was getting bigger and bigger and bigger and building to something, and we never actually get to see too much of it. We see a big battle at the end as expected, but we don't see too much. And I think that books 2 and 3 will have that kind of big epic conclusion that I'm looking for, which is why I'm excited to read them. So overall, I really enjoyed the book Live Free or Die. It is not a favorite book of the year, and it is not even a favorite sci-fi book necessarily, but it is setting up a really interesting world. The main character is really intriguing and probably will stick with me as a main character because he's so different. And then also, I think that as I mentioned, the worldview stuff was really just fascinating for me to read. But overall, really enjoyed this book. So if you've read Live Free or Die, let me know your thoughts and comments down below in the comments section. If you loved it, let me know. If you hated it, if you haven't read it, if you're interested in reading it, all those thoughts and comments. And have you read anything else by John Ringo that I should read? I've never read anything else by him, but I want to read more by him and by other authors at Baen Books because I love Baen Books. So let me know all your thoughts down in the comments section down below. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.